It's time.
All our icons are down.
All right, is everyone ready? Yeah? Everyone here? Good?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
unfortunately.
Wonderful.
Unfortunately.
Did you
All
take
right.
a picture of us and post it to Twitter?
I took a picture of that.
Okay, that's
Oh.
right.
enough.
All right.
That's much better.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
All the
definitely
pictures
better.
people have taken me so far this event look like crap. So
Fair.
I don't need
All
more
right,
pictures.
I think we're ready to start the recording. That's good? All right. All right, wonderful. All right, hello, everyone. My name is Osmorn, and welcome to our panel, From the Ground Up, a guide on how to start your own online speedrunning marathon. I'm super excited to be presenting this information to y'all today. I myself have organized several marathons in the past 2 years, all of them being online. And that is like the first major disclaimer that I want to put out, is that this is a panel on online marathon organization, meaning not a marathon like the one you're currently at, but anything that you can do from home and on an online space and community. So much more accessible, much easier to do, and it costs a lot less money.
Yeah.
Free 99, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But before we begin, I have 4 wonderful people here with me that agreed to be on this panel and that are all very experienced in the organization and marathon scene. If you want to introduce yourself, starting with Crime.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Metroid Crime. I am the organizer and founder for Lady Arcaders, and I also help out on various other smaller speedrunning marathons as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Limey.
Hello, I'm Limey, Limca SSB. I've been involved with a lot of different stuff. Calathon, speed stuff for charity, which is, our next one's going to be our 10th one, which would be 10 years, which is very cool. I'm involved, I have my fingers in a lot of things, but I'm not directly involved in a lot of stuff right now, just because I've been so busy with a lot of other stuff.
Varn.
Hi, I'm Varin. I've been doing this for 10 years, actually. I was 10 years in October, this past October. I am staff on Lady Arcaders. I am staff on SS4C. I used to be staff on Power with Pride. I currently am staff for GDQ. Yeah, that's me. Hello.
And
What a
at the
resume.
end, we have Helix.
What's up, y'all? I'm Helix. I am a co-lead of Midwest Speed Fest. I am also a director for this very organization, Games Done Quick. So is Varen. I also sometimes I head up smaller events because I feel like it. Like I did one Hollow Hero Spring Break, and that was all to raise funds to support my partner and his top surgery. So things like that.
Wonderful. All right. And me, again, I'm Osmorn. I'm the lead organizer for, one of the lead organizers for No Glitches Allowed. I'm also part of the main organizational team for Multithon. And throughout the last year, I've organized 3 separate mutual aid events for 3 separate individuals. All they were Corathon, Black Hearts Boston Fund, and Bear Force One, all aiding other people in the speedrunning community that were going through crisis at the time and needed financial aid. And I was able to successfully put on a marathon for each of these individuals. And me personally, I think those are some of the best work that I've done as an organizer, and I'm excited to share the experiences that I've had via this panel, and see all the experiences that everyone else brings to the table as well. So yeah, we're gonna have a Q&A section, so of course hold all the questions till the end, and I'm hoping that this inspires new people to get into the scene and try and organize a marathon of their own. And if you're already in the scene, maybe you can find some ideas that maybe you weren't aware of before, and use this information to grow your own communities and improve your own marathons if possible. So yeah, and thank you so much to the wonderful members for being here. But to begin, it all starts with an idea. There are 3 major questions that you should ask yourself when you want to organize a marathon. First and foremost, who is your marathon for? The majority of marathons are for anybody to submit to. Any marathon that you see, like including GDQ, it's just anyone can submit to it, anyone can get into it. It doesn't have a specific restriction as to what content it holds, aside from basic Twitch restrictions or YouTube restrictions, depending on what site you're streaming on. But some examples of specific marathons that cater to specific communities or specific demographics include Frame Fatales, Lady Arcaders, Girls Go Fast, which is all communities specifically for women and femme-leaning individuals, or Lion Speedrunner Assembly, a marathon organized by the wonderful Jew Horse, in an online community for Singaporean speedrunners. So there's a lot of marathons that cater to specific demographics of people or specific communities, like dedicated to like specific games, like horror games, which is going to be our next question. Like, what is the theme of the marathon? And as I said, the themes can range from like specific genres or specific restrictions that you want to put on the games that you accept. The biggest example, RPG Limit Break, a very popular marathon dedicated to RPG speedruns. Multithon, a marathon that I help organize, which is speedruns for more than one person, races, co-ops, relays, etc. like that. And then the Clock Tower, organized by Team Clock Tower, it was primarily horror speedruns. And the last major question that you want to ask yourself is, why are you putting on the marathon? You can do marathons for charity. You can do it for mutual aid, helping out a specific individual, or you can just put on a marathon for fun. The vast majority of marathons do benefit some kind of person or some kind of charity, but there is a very small percentage of marathons that just put on a marathon for the sake of putting it on. Like, it's not putting it on for a charity is not a requirement. It might change the way you go about certain organizational skills, but it's by no means a requirement. You can't just do something for the love of it. I've seen it several times in the speedrunning scene. And now that all this information is up here, I do want to throw it over to other people here on the panel to answer specific questions about some of this information that we have here. I wanted to throw this first question over to Crime. Specifically, because I know, of course, you organize Lady Arcaders, and that is for a specific demographic. And the question we have are, like, what are some obstacles that might come with fostering a marathon or community for a specific demographic, and how might it be different from organizing an event that, like, anyone can submit to?
So I can speak in terms of, like, Lady Arcaders, for example, and also I guess Frame Fatales also does the similar thing where you kind of have to keep your communities closed because, you know, a lot of people are not, you know, women have kind of a hard time in some of these spaces. And so building a community that is kind of like closed off is beneficial to a lot of us. So with that type of thing, you'd have to have like either like an invite system or like a public Discord that people could join to request an invite to the community. But it's also like, it depends on what you are, what your goals are, I guess, for the event, in terms of like whether you want to just close it off to your community specifically, or if you want to involve other people in terms of volunteers and how much help you want from people who might not be directly involved in your own community. So you kind of have to figure out your own needs for your event.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And if that's something that people are interested in, whether it's like you want to host like a marathon for all women, or in my case, I could host a marathon for like everyone that's Hispanic and Spanish-speaking speedrunners, or any kind of demographic, there's always a specific system that you might want to put in place that open marathons might not have to do, because it's essentially open for everyone. Focusing on this second point here, what is the theme of your marathon? Some obstacles that might come with like having a specific theme is, of course, like it's another form of restricting the kind of content that you have in your marathon. And when you restrict that kind of content, you're therefore going to be restricting the volume of submissions that you get. That's probably like the most important thing to keep in mind. For example, multi-thon speedruns with more than one person, the vast majority of speedrunners do not know a speedrun with another human being. Like they don't do it with another speedrunner. They do it for themselves. And granted, they could easily like ask someone to race them. Like that's an easier option, but not everyone is willing to race another person at an event, especially if they've never done an event like that's in like a public eye before. And so that's something to keep in mind. Or no glitches allowed, for example. You do kind of have to kind of realize that like it's supposed to be like glitchless and no major glitches kinds of runs that are going to be at that event. You're going to have to judge things differently when you're like in the accepting process. You're going to have to maybe promote your event a lot more than like another marathon would, because you want specific communities or specific people to be submitting to your event that might that might not come otherwise, right? Because with open invite or like with open marathons with no restrictions in content, you're easily able to get more and more people to like submit to your marathons because anyone can submit to it. There's no restrictions, and so you have a lot more options to choose from. And that's something that you're gonna have to keep in mind, whether it's restricting the type of run or the genre of run or the type of games that you want to accept into your marathon. And for this last point right here, why are you putting on a marathon? I'm going to focus on that first question, are you raising money for a charity? And I want to direct that over to Helix at the end of the table here and ask them, how do you go about choosing a good charity for your event, and what are the factors that need to be taken into consideration?
Yeah, so I'm going to assume that your goal here is to raise as much money for your chosen cause as possible. It needs to be a cause you personally, agree with and are passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, how can you expect other people to be? It needs to be a cause that aligns with the values of your demographic. Which, I mean, if you're just starting out, it might be a little tough to gauge what that's going to be, and maybe you at that point go with something a little more generic. But, I mean, essentially, if your demographic doesn't agree with it, they're not going to donate. That's just how it is. Something that I have found to actually be very important is how easy is the charity to get a hold of?
So true.
That's so real.
Oh boy, I've had events that were very hard because the charity was not responsive to our questions. When we needed things from them, they took a long time to get back to us. And if you're doing something on Tiltify and the charity's on Tiltify, it's a lot easier that way. If you're doing, if you have a donation tracker that's a little bit more involved, you need maybe to get a PayPal from the charity. If you can't contact them, you can't get that PayPal, you can't use your tracker, and you can't do your marathon. So having a charity that is easily contactable is really helpful. And then also that way they can send you stuff like branding for your layouts and things, or they can help you with blurbs that you send to hosts to read out. So I think that's kind of an underrated one, but again, I think the most important is your community needs to identify with and want to support the charity.
For sure. And to touch on that last point that they made about being able to easily contact the charity out, you can also schedule interviews with representatives from the charity to talk about the cause that you're raising money for, and that impacts a lot of a lot of people might want to donate more once they hear straight from a representative how much the cause means to them and what exactly your money is going towards. That means a lot to the people on staff. It means a lot to the viewers. It means a lot to everyone that's participating or consuming the marathon in some way. And so that's another really good reason why being able to easily reach the charity is an important factor. But those are the main points that I wanted to focus on for this first slide. Who's your marathon for? What is the theme? Why are you putting on a marathon? All of them come with their very specific obstacles, but those are all things you need to keep in mind when you're originally trying to build the foundation for your marathon. Now this next slide, it's dangerous to go alone. This is not something that you can do by yourself. You will need help. No matter how much you could know how to do every single part of a marathon, but you will still need help because you are only one person. And so to start off with, of course, there's going to be people like volunteers, but there needs to be a primary staff or organizational team, each person with their specific skills that they'll bring to the table. First and foremost, primary organizers, AKA you. You're going to be the primary organizer, making sure that everything is in place and on track for show week. You need to be good at communicating with others and other people that you have on staff, the department heads, including volunteers and runners. Very good communication and being able to maintain a level of professionalism when communicating with others is the most important thing when it comes to organizing your marathon. And so that's going to be you. Of course, you're going to be there, but what other things do you need? Now there's tech leads. They handle all the back end for tech, including how video and audio works, how it's going to be captured, how the stream is going to be broadcasted, how setup and restream volunteers will be helping with the production of the event. They're going to be handling anyone that's volunteering for tech as well. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind. And I did want to direct this question over to Limey and Baran, since they're very tech experienced. If it isn't you that's doing tech, what do you think would be a good thing to look out for when you're looking for someone who is a tech lead for your marathon, when you want to recruit someone on that position?
Do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I can go first. So I think this is probably something that a lot of people are going to say, but a lot of people end up working with their friends on events. They have a friend who's really into computers or really into streaming or really into something, and then those kind of skills will translate into something that they can do specifically for the event. And that's actually how I got started, was because I was really into computer engineering, and that's what I wanted to go to school for. And somebody said, hey, I need help with this stream thing at this marathon. Do you know how to click buttons on a computer? And I went, you bet. And here I am 10 years later on this panel. So a lot of times you will be looking inwards to your inner circle, to your friends who have hobbies that very closely relate to the things that you want to achieve for your event, whether that's you have somebody who sets up all of your OBS things to broadcast, or someone who creates a bunch of documentation for how those things will work, or making decisions for how flows will go. So specifically for Helix and I, we do directing for GDQ. So a lot of what we do is making sure people are doing the right things at the right time, that, you know, the runners are prepped, that, you know, audio and video looks good and things like that. So you might have somebody who might excel in talking to people versus, you know, people like on the other end, me and Limey, who are DJs at 4 a.m. before an event starts, finishing the OBS package. So, sometimes it's, looking into your friends. Do you have anything to add to that, Limey?
Yeah, one thing I like to look for, if it's not me doing just like all the tech, is passion. A lot of people who don't really know the most will end up learning quite a lot just because they're very passionate about wanting to help, very passionate about charity, very passionate about learning how to do this honestly complicated stuff on OBS and in Node.cg and everything. So as long as they're willing to learn, I'd give anyone a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I back that
Exactly.
up.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's how we got started. So.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a very good thing to keep in mind when looking for tech leads. And so that's pretty much all the good facets of like a tech lead. But and that's probably one of the most important things about your marathon tech. You know, how you're going to broadcast it, and so that's going to be the thing that gets your event out on a stream and make it high quality. But of course, there's also all the engagement and entertainment factors that go into the stream itself, and that isn't exclusive to runners. It's also exclusive to hosts, which is where the hosting leads come in. They themselves, of course, should be participating in hosting, but they also need to train hosts how to be engaging in like an engaging presence on the host mic in between runs and also during runs, learning how to communicate with the runners and what each runner's hosting needs are going to be during their runs. And you're also going to be handling all the host volunteers, and that could be like scheduling them, finding backups for hosts. All of the specific responsibilities and how far they extend might vary from marathon to marathon, but those are general responsibilities that are very common for each and every host lead. And I'm actually going to direct it over to my host lead for No Glitches Allowed, Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
If it's not you doing the hosting, or the hosting lead, what do you think makes a good host lead, and what should someone look out for in wanting to recruit one?
You want someone who is going to support the hosting team. Hosts have to deal with a lot. Basically, you'd want someone who is engaging and willing to listen to the other hosts, to feel like what their needs are, to be able to, like, if you are deciding what host goes with which run on the schedule, you want to make sure to match the host's energy to the runner and to the comms team. Also, as hosting lead, you want someone who's going to be good at writing documentation and expressing and directing what they want the blurbs to look like, with the help, obviously, of whatever you get from the charity itself. But making sure that all the blurbs are written out so that they sound good when they are being read out loud. They're not words that get stumbled over. That it's not overly like wordy paragraphs, basically. And just having someone who communicates well with the rest of the team on what they need from the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So those are all the good facets of a hosting lead and things you should look out for when wanting to recruit. There's also moderation leads. I don't know unless I'm mistaken, I don't know if any of us specifically are a moderation lead for any specific marathon.
Not specifically.
I
moderation.
kind of, Speedfest doesn't
Yeah.
have one, so
Yeah.
I just end
Yeah.
up doing it.
Yeah.
because-
Yeah,
Exactly.
a lot of the specific roles in smaller events just kind of get consolidated onto one or two people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So
it's
we're used to
usually-
that.
There's usually a couple of us for SS4C that literally goes and looks at the old moderation list and then looks at the new ones and go, all right, we gotta get rid of these and put these in, and good luck, everybody.
Yeah, most of the
Yeah.
people for like SS4C are just the same throughout like all the events.
Yeah.
And like with the Midwest Speedfest Discord server, it's just we all pitch in, we all understand what we're looking for, what our community is like, what it should be, and so we all just pitch in.
Exactly. And that is a beneficial system that you can use for how to approach moderation. But, of course, I wrote down here moderation lead because several marathons, including the ones that I organize, do have dedicated moderation leads. They can write the documentation for moderators, train moderators on how to look out for like bad actors in chats, and that could be moderation for the Discord server, depending on how large the event is, or it could be, but it's especially moderation for Twitch chat. Especially if you're hosting a marathon dedicated to specific minorities, there can be a lot of bad actors in those chats, and you need to be able to make sure that, at the very least, of course, like everyone on staff is on the same page as to how moderation goes, but especially you want a person who is going to be training volunteers and seeing how showing the volunteers what they need to look out for, and make sure that they have all the information necessary to them in order to do their job most effectively. And I did want to kind of open this question up to Varn and Helix over here. I want to ask, like, what do you think is the best way to like schedule moderation? Because I know that several communities do have dedicated shifts for moderation, and other communities just kind of like let moderators come and go as they are available throughout the marathon. And I wanted to see what your insight was on each of those systems if you've experienced them.
This, in my opinion, totally depends on the size of your event.
Yeah.
Speedfest, we can get away with not scheduling people and just being like, yeah, show up whenever. I mean, if I know that we are going to get more exposure, if I know that
Front page of like SRC of Twitch,
Yes.
or we know we're going to get a big raid from a streamer. So sometimes streamers will find smaller events, like big streamers will go, hey, my run's ending or my thing is ending and I want to raid you. Are you okay with 2,000 people bombarding your chat? And so it definitely does depend on the
yeah. Or we'll get like a GDQ raid, and then I will ping all of my mods and be like, hey,
at everyone.
hands on deck, please. Yeah. Or even like, maybe we'll have Simply running Super Mario 64, and it's like, yeah, I expect this to get a lot of interaction, so I'm going to put out a call. If you're available, please help out. If you're a larger event, I think you do need to schedule, because the risk that no one is there and that something happens is greater. And so when that risk gets too great, there's not a set point for that. It's kind of up to your discretion. But when that risk gets too great, you need to mitigate it as much as you possibly can.
Exactly. And those are things that like that's an example of something that might grow and evolve as your marathon is growing and evolving. Of course, when you're a marathon and you're really small, you might not need, as Helix said, to schedule moderators, but the bigger it gets, the more you're going to have to focus on specific details like that. And so those are things to keep in mind. Next are the social media leads. I'm pretty active on social media. I've been working on this. I'm the social media lead for Multithon, and I've been on the GDQ meme team for around 2 years now, volunteering for the social media team here at the events. And of course, you want someone that has social media and knows how different social media sites work, especially if you are willing to extend out onto different platforms such as Instagram or TikTok. I put the Twitter symbol here because without a doubt, what I've seen, Twitter is the area that you're going to get the most traction from when it comes to like people viewing when your marathon is happening, promotion for your marathon. Twitter is just where the people are a lot of the time, and so that's why many marathons, that's their first social media platform that they really use. And if you're going to choose just one social media platform, I would say that it should be Twitter. And so there are different types of ways that you can go about social media, but you do want to find someone who is pretty at the very least semi-active on social media, knows how social media works, knows how to train others on how social media works, and being able to write engaging things on Twitter. And so I feel like that's the part that people underestimate the most about social media, is that it is a writing job first and foremost. And so you want, if you want your event to be promoted and promoted well, you got to find people who are good at doing that and good at training other people to do that as well.
And to be clear, you don't, and something to elaborate on social media, because I used to not be good at social media, and I'm still not, but have done this before. where you don't need to necessarily do social media live. If you're just a handful of homies, you can sit down and write some basic tweets that you think will be kind of funny, kind of relative to a run, and then you just copy and paste it and put a cute little GIF on it, and you hit tweet or send or
Yeah.
post or whatever. So it doesn't need to necessarily be something really elaborate where you need to have somebody who's really good at writing copy or really good at like finding memes in the moment when they happen. Because honestly, social media in and of itself is a lot of work, is a lot of work. It is really sometimes difficult to be very engaging, to be very active. You need someone watching the event to always crank out memes or anything like that. You can literally just have a couple of people, you can sit down and just write some really funny things about the people in your community and have a great time.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be strenuous. It can be pre-planned, because we do that for SS4C.
Yeah.
We sit 4 a.m. the night before the event and crank out tweets.
Yeah.
It's either like 4 a.m. or like first couple of runs, and then
Yeah.
we finish. And then sometimes if someone makes a clip and it's really funny, we tweet that as well.
We can tweet that
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
And that's all we have to do. And it's not too bad if your event is small and you don't have
Yeah.
a dedicated person.
Social
Exact-
media tends to be intimidating, and it doesn't need to be.
It doesn't need to be, and I think that that's also something that kind of grows and evolves with as your event gets bigger. If you're at the size of GDQ, cool stuff is happening on stream all the time, and you want to be paying attention to the stream so you can promote that and clip cool things that are happening, or use promotional materials from photographers and stuff like that. But when you are small, you can get away with like scheduling stuff ahead of time, pre-writing tweets, making sure that there's less stress on you and your volunteers, so you can focus more on original content or clipping certain parts of stream whenever you can. And finally, the last major facet is a layout designer, creating designs for everything that you see on stream, whether it's like all of where the games are going to be placed, how the designs are going to be, like how much space you're going to leave for runner names, commentator names, charity logos, the final total that you currently have, face cams, no face cams, all those kinds of things that you're going to be seeing on stream, and making it look pretty for people to look at, because people like looking at pretty things. And I know that you are also
Yeah, I'm going to mention something about this too, because when you're looking for someone to design your layout, please look for someone who knows how to do informational design. If you have someone who is a designer, who is like a graphic designer, maybe they do illustration, like having them paired with someone who knows how to properly lay out information on a screen, what size fonts should be there, what colors contrast with other ones, to make sure that your layout is as accessible as possible for everyone watching. It's extremely important, and a lot of people don't consider that as being a factor in addition to making it look pretty. It has to be functional.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I also want to mention, like, if you don't know about design right now, it's definitely a skill that you can learn. It's very intimidating,
Yes.
but like, even me, I didn't have very much design experience when I first started. Like, don't look at anything I made before like 2018. But now everything I make is decent.
Your layout's slap now. Give yourself more credit.
Yeah,
They're
your
good.
layout's
They're
good.
good now.
Yeah, it's good.
Great.
It's great.
very
And
good.
yeah, I saw Crime wanted to pop in with that. So I was
Yes,
gonna
sorry.
throw-
Yes,
yeah.
I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
not so great.
course. Of course. How-
marathon
Yeah,
layouts.
me
And
too.
everybody starts somewhere. Let's be very
Yeah.
clear
Yeah,
that
exactly.
like you don't need to have the fanciest layouts in the universe. You could literally scribble something in MS Paint and then just like leave little like transparent holes and put a feet in it. That's great. I'm glad you have a layout. Do not let anyone discourage you from at least trying.
Yeah.
Ever. Because
Yeah.
I started there. I was the one who in Photoshop put like little things in, let the transparent box and put a
Yeah.
feet in it. Like, you
I
know,
still do
sometimes.
that sometimes for my stream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes that's what you have. So definitely like
Yeah, and
shoot your shot.
of course. And before we move on from this, I did want to like ask an open question for anyone on the panel. If people don't have like, I don't know, specific friends that they might recruit for, or specific people in mind that they might have to recruit for specific positions, but they still are in need of like specific leads for specific positions, like how do you think they might go about like looking for people who have these skills that might benefit them in their marathon?
Yeah, so at least personally what I do, and my good friend Conception, love that guy, what he says is just ask. Always just ask. It never hurts to ask. If you are watching a marathon and you're like, oh wow, this is produced very well, I love every single part of this marathon, reach out to the staff. Maybe they might not be busy. They might be able to help you with your event, and you might be able to learn some stuff from that if you're pretty new.
And if they are busy, they might be able to direct you to someone who can help.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
It never hurts to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
post in your communities, post on social media, ask other people who organize events. Like, even though they might be busy now, they might know somebody who's not, and that's how I get DMs every week of, hey, are you doing anything? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
You just know people, and you only will get to know more people by branching yourself out to other people.
Exactly. So never be afraid to ask. You might get someone who you like who's 1,000 times better than you were ever expecting in your marathon to be working on these positions. So it never hurts. Next, you have to create a timeline. There are always different. There are all sorts of different important deadlines that you need to have in order to create a successful marathon. Stuff that goes behind the scenes that the public does not see at all. First and foremost, opening and closing run-in and volunteer submissions. You're going to have to create forms for that, or you can go through specific resources that we're going to get into after this slide. You need a method of runners submitting runs to your events and volunteers submitting applications to your event for each position, and you need to decide on a date as to when those are going to open and when those are going to close. And of course, accepting and rejecting games. Once the run submissions are closed, you need to create a timeline for how long you're going to spend on accepting and rejecting games. Some marathons, I've seen some marathons do it like really quickly. I've seen some marathons take a month. I've seen some marathons take 2 weeks. It'll be dependent on you and your timeline and how much time you've allotted for this kind of process. And especially if you're a bigger marathon, you're going to want a lot more time because there's more submissions. And so it really is dependent on your specific needs. Accepting and assigning volunteers to roles. At some point, you will have to look at all the volunteer submissions and see what each person is interested in, what skills they have, what experiences they have, and assign them to specific roles by a specific date so that they know and can prep for those roles, and also be able to schedule them.
Can I chime in something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's always okay to have one volunteer on multiple roles, but you don't have to accept them for every role they apply to. It can lead to a lot of stress, and it's also just a lot to keep track of, especially if they're only like they have a limited amount of availability through the event.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We're gonna actually we're gonna go into that more detail in a bit. And so the next thing is of course announcing a main schedule. Once you've accepted all of the runs, you're gonna have to figure out everyone's availability. Spoiler alert: you might have to reject someone on the basis of availability, so you do need to keep that in mind and
We went
adjust
over that
it.
yesterday.
Yeah, you do need to keep that in mind and adjust accordingly, and make sure that you have a specific date for when your main schedule is going to be announced. And that is a date that needs to be publicized to runners and volunteers, everyone involved, so that they know exactly when the marathon or like when they're going to be showing up to the marathon on show day. Writing and releasing written guides for each volunteer role. Writing is something that you can do as early as you can, but you do need a specific date as to when you need to release these roles. Me personally, I like to bring out all information to volunteers at the very least 3 weeks in advance, preferably a month, because people need to call off work if they work. Some people like to call off work for specific marathons, but people need to be prepared for their roles. And I know a lot of people can also schedule runner orientations for specific roles, and that kind of falls under pre-event work. And that includes tech checks, making sure that all of the runners are prepared for their runs and or host depending on the audio system that you use, in order to make sure that their machines are able to stream at a stable rate once show week comes. All the runners submitting relevant forms. A lot of marathons have like confirmation forms that runners have to fill out based on information, based on their games and themselves, pronoun information, game information like aspect ratio, content warnings for their games, all sorts of things, and that needs to have a specific deadline and a hard deadline so that your volunteers and your staff can have enough time to crank that onto the schedule and adjust accordingly. And that also involves creating another pre-event work is creating a tech backend. How are you going to manage everything on the back end? What systems you're going to use for the back end? And you want to get those done as quickly as possible. I would say the sooner you can get those done, the better. And of course, the event itself. You need to have a date for when the event is going to happen, and exactly and how many days it's going to be lasting. Some marathons are 2 days, some marathons are 1 day, some marathons are 3 days. 3 days is the most common, but again, depending on the volume of submissions or depending on just what you want to do, it can be shorter or longer. And to finish out this specific slide, I'm actually going to direct a question over towards Varn, because I know you have a lot of opinions about this question. How much time should a person allot for this timeline? How much time do you think should be allotted for each of these deadlines? And like, how do you choose effective dates? Like, well, actually answer that first question first. How long do you think?
So it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing it for a charity, you have an entire year of time to look at. You have time to look at when other events are. Is there anything similar that might be happening on a weekend? You don't want to go too close to it. You definitely, like, you know, if you plan around big events or maybe other smaller events, other community events. If you're doing it for benefit or relief for somebody, like, you know, like you're fundraising for something very, very important very soon, quick turnaround events, then you would need to have obviously a much shorter timeline. That's kind of your first basis. And then from there you go, all right, well, what do I have going on in my own life? A lot of times people will be like, I want to do this. And they kind of forget you have your own life going on. You have your own job, you have your own family, you have holidays, you have things like that. And then once you eliminate those from your schedule, you go, okay, where is a 3 to 4 month block of time to do this? And honestly, that's my recommendation for a general timeline, is you want to give yourself about 3 to 4 months from when you would open submissions and start planning to when the event starts. This will give you sometimes dedicated chunks, so you have like 2 weeks open for submissions, a week and a half to look at them, you know, 4 days to make 3 or 4 days to make a schedule, and then from there, once you have a schedule, then you plan your volunteers, and then you know, it kind of cascades after that. So there's kind of just like when you think about making a timeline, you always start with when, where, what, and how. And once you kind of answer those 4 main ones, the dates then start to come to you, and we'll break down from there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yeah, you always have to keep those in mind. And you actually kind of answered the second half of the question that I was going to ask. How do you choose?
Saving time, baby, speedrunning.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, how do you choose effective dates? But you did answer that with like making sure that you're not overlapping with personal life stuff
For
and also
other events.
Other
Yeah,
events
that's the other flip side of that, is that people will be like, oh my gosh, this is a great weekend for something, and they'll look at it and there's 4 other events that weekend. You're like, well, never mind. And sometimes you will get your second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth pick of a date. It happens because online events are now so prevalent that a lot of people will do events. It's almost impossible to schedule an event without another one going on, to be quite honest. Like, it is very,
Exactly.
very, very hard. And if you find a date in a year at any given time that doesn't have another event on it, congratulations, you found the holy grail. Now you're someone else's problem.
Yeah, true.
You have somebody else doesn't want that weekend, and you've already claimed it.
Yeah, in 2 months, someone's going to schedule over you anyway.
Yep.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
No, you're so right. And depending, and I've had situations where I did have a scheduled like date for my event, Complete-a-thon of last year, what had a specific date in August, and we were there, and we saw that no other events were overlapping it, and then GDQ announced Flame Fatales on that same week.
My bad, big
Speed
dog.
Fest.
My bad.
That happened to Speedfest too.
Yeah,
Look,
Flame
and
Fatale's 8-hour lunch.
I want to be very clear. I'm gonna look right in the camera for this. I don't pick the event dates. I just worked there. I want that on the record. I worked there. I don't pick the event dates.
exactly.
I think we should
Well-
still blame you.
Speedfest was ruined in this instance too, because we were in an in-person marathon, so we couldn't move our dates either. So
yeah,
Yeah.
Big
ball, baby.
And
Yeah.
Speedfest constantly almost schedules over SS4C as well. So.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
We want the 3rd weekend. You got the 4th weekend. Cool. And then like that's it. That's it.
Beautiful.
Like that's all we got.
yeah. But like that point is to say that like your plans will have to change, because obviously you can't go up to an organization as big as GDQ and say, hey, can you move your dates for us because we announced
Whoa.
it first.
Honestly,
yeah, we were here
if you end up
first.
hitting that poll, give me a raise, by the way.
I
Yeah.
would love the audacity.
Like your plans are gonna have to change, and you're gonna have to be adaptable to a certain extent. Of course, if you're gonna be doing events for like a prolonged period of time, there will inevitably come a time where you're gonna be overlapping another event, and that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. That could have negative consequences, or it could have neutral consequences, because maybe that event has a completely different audience than you do, and a completely
Or
different circle than you do.
even in positive, because sometimes events, especially if they're hosted by communities in other countries, sometimes you can like co-raid each other, so one will end and one will end to the other, and then you just kind of like feed the energy and just feed your viewers back and forth. But I've seen that before, but
Yeah,
it
exactly.
can sometimes
That's
be
really
a good
cool.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all dependent on like what's happening and the time that you want to put your event on. And so now, how are you going to do all these things? Well, we have specific resources that are available to you. These are pretty basic resources. The resources that are that are public and open to anyone. First of all, submission resources. The 2 most common ones are Angus however you want to
It
pronounce
is
that word.
Angus, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it is.
I learned I've been saying it wrong for a very long time.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Today
Angus.
I learned.
Yeah, no, it's Angus.
Yes.
Yeah.
It,
I'm just
So
finding
why
this
is
out
the
right
O?
now.
Anyway.
yeah,
continue.
it's a Swedish. It's Swedish. So, Angus is a platform hosted by European Speedrunner Assembly, and it's probably the most common system for submitting submitting to other marathons. If you're like me, I check it every week, if not every day.
Yeah.
And so, and it's all on a public page. Like all of if you have your marathon marked as public, it will all appear on a public page.
There's also a calendar that
Yeah,
has
and a
all of
calendar.
the dates. It's super nice.
It is super nice.
Especially for looking up if you're conflicting dates with another event. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But of course, there's an alternative, which is Google Forms. I've seen a lot of marathons do submissions through Google Forms. I've done.
Nothing wrong with Google Forms.
Nothing wrong with
Nothing
it.
wrong.
Nothing
It's
wrong.
the
It gets the
classic.
job done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets the job done.
Especially
Especially since like for on Angus you're gonna have to like export the submissions to a spreadsheet anyway, so you could like mitigate the process, but that could affect it could affect visibility of the submissions, like because then you're relying on like social media or circles or discords in order to promote your event, and you should still do that if you're using Angus, but Angus does have the benefit of a lot of people check it, and if your marathon is public, then it will appear right there on the front page for people to see. Like a hub for all the marathons.
I have a question before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to check this before, but does SRC still do marathons?
I do not think
No,
that they
I
do.
don't think so.
I don't think so. No.
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
I believe
SRC
they
used to
shut
have
that
a
down.
system for submitting and
They did.
and
Yeah, they
submitting
did.
runs
And
to
it was
marathons, but
all right.
yeah.
It was a resource that existed and it got the job done
It
Yeah.
was the best one that was available for a while,
for
in my opinion.
a long while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before
And then
Angus.
Angus took that over real
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, and right now Angus is the norm with some marathons using Google Forms.
If you look at old Midwest Speed Fest marathons, most of them are on SRC.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same with SS4C.
SS4C.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we actually had like a series, and then right when that happened, Angus came out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It took us
exactly.
like 6 years.
Of course. And then there's scheduling resources. You can also use Angus there's a scheduling system on there. I think it has its pros and cons, which we'll get into it in a bit. And then there's also Araro. Usually people who end up like using the submission process through Google Forms end up using Araro for like a public facing schedule. And so that is a system that is designed for marathons. I see a lot of people who aren't using or aren't like in the speedrunning scene use that system as well. So you could do it for other things. It's a very adaptable system. And so that's a system that I've used a lot. I personally like it, and I also think that it looks visually better than the schedule on Angus when you publicize it. So that's also
Yeah, and you can customize it more
yeah,
too.
you can.
It's like themed.
I've seen marathons use both Angus and Araro. Me personally, I like Araro a lot. But of course, Angus has the benefit of just having an all-in-one system. The
I'm
submission
a personal
and scheduling
believer you
process.
should be posting your schedule in as many places as possible
Yeah.
and
Yes.
cross-posting. As much as it is a pain to update your schedule in multiple places, the more places you have to advertise, the better. So
Exactly. And then here is another system that is I've seen marathons use it. You can use Google Sheets. If you're using like a private, like if you're like it's like a private marathon that like is just between friends, like you can do that, and you don't want to publicize it. Like Google Sheets is a thing. Like you can just do that. If you're doing like a public marathon, I would not recommend it. Because especially people who aren't involved in the event in any way, just a viewer, it is much easier to read on Araro and much more customizable. But
it's really
again,
hard to make a spreadsheet pretty. To be
Yeah,
quite
it really
honest.
is.
It is an
Yeah.
acquired skill, and
Absolutely.
took
Yeah.
me many years to make spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I
pretty,
still
so.
can't make spreadsheets pretty. I just make.
That's why
I just
I
make
do.
them
That's
it.
why I do our
Yeah.
spreadsheets.
yeah, and I've seen, and that's another reason why I put Google Sheets at the bottom here, where it's like it's a resource that you can use, and many marathons use it, but it's not something that I commonly see very often. And of course,
Spreadsheets are very powerful if you know what you're doing.
yeah,
Exactly.
they are. Of
Now I'm
course.
talking about spreadsheets.
Yeah, it's talking about spreadsheets. Information tracking, Google Forms for like when runners need to submit information to you, and then of course to track all the information that gets submitted, you can just use Google Sheets. Google Sheets is your best friend throughout like the entire marathon process, whether it's like looking at all the submissions or looking at all the information that gets submitted or it gets submitted via forms to your event, or simply having an internal volunteer schedule. Usually those are done via Google Sheets. And yeah, so like these are pretty good resources that you can use for all of these different facets of your marathon. And I did want to just ask an open-ended question of just like, what do you any opinions on the pros and cons of these systems, and are there any other systems that maybe aren't listed here that you might recommend to the audience?
Yeah, actually, something that I think is actually probably towards me and crime, but we actually have a website for
Yes.
Lady Arcaders
Yes,
that
we
we take submissions for our Attract Mode showcases through. I used to also be staff on Powered with Pride, and if you actually go to check out their website, they no longer do, but we used to have a submission seat that was, or a submission form that was baked into our website. So you literally could just go on our website and do it. We didn't do, this was before Angus, sorry, I'm trying to get used to that. And we went from Google Forms to our own submission seat. There's also the submission site for Frame Fatales. There's also the submissions for Games Done Quick as a whole. So if you have people who are very, I won't say very, but more tech savvy, who have the time and ability and resources available to them, you can just make your own submission sheet.
Yep.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is very rewarding because you get to customize what information you will be ingesting versus working around what is available to you through Google Forms, through Angus, putting your schedule on Hararo, things like that. So that is an option. You can do it if you feel like it. I guess it's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work though. So.
It is a
Yeah.
lot of work.
It is
Yeah,
a lot
of
yeah.
work.
We tie a lot of our submissions into our layouts and everything for Lady Arcaders, so it's just like one central information hub that we can use for our stuff and then export to these other services like Hararo or having a Google Sheets for specifically for volunteers, for example. Yeah.
And I know that you have taught people how to make websites as well.
Different, slightly different.
Slightly
yes,
different
not-
websites.
Slightly
this is more
different,
coding
yeah.
heavy.
Yeah, of course, more coding heavy. but
Graphic design
you have, but you
is
have
my
graphic
passion.
design
passion. I love
you
the
have
little
experience
frog
in
in
it,
the
at the
sky.
very
Yes,
least.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very experienced in coding and tech. It's what I do for my day job. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Same.
I will
Not to the
say,
same degree, but
Angus is slowly getting better. They're slowly adding more and more features, and you got to think really far ahead for this. But if they don't have a feature that you want, you can like request it on like their GitHub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an option.
Exactly. So yeah, those are the resources available to you. And for these next few slides, I'm going to take a back seat and I'm going to hand the floor over to the members of the panel here. As I asked each of them to write a slide or two on specific topics, starting with making big decisions with Metroid Crime.
Sure.
And you can
Yeah, I got it too. Thank you. Oh, is it just
yeah,
down?
just click.
Okay. So yeah, now that you have know which resources you're using and you have everything kind of an idea of how you want everything to go, it's time to make some big decisions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you need to keep in mind to ensure that you have a good quality marathon that will keep people engaged and get more people to tune in. So accepting runs. You can't accept everyone. You're going to have to make some really hard decisions. Obviously, it depends on the size of your event. Like Oz was talking, if you have an event that's a more niche, you might be able to accept everyone. But if, say, you run that event again next year and you've picked up traction, you're going to end up having to make those hard decisions eventually. And yeah, like I said, your requirements for accepting runs will vary wildly depending on the event you're putting on. Like say, for example, if your focus is highlighting new runners, you probably want to keep that in mind versus if you want to put a certain type of theme on, you have to make sure that, like for no glitches allowed, make sure that someone didn't submit a run with glitches, or if there's a glitch, is it within the acceptable range for your marathon? You're just gonna have to do a lot of like curating of your content. It also helps if you happen to get some submissions from people who have shown to be reliable in the past, or if you know that someone is constantly no-showing for events, canceling, then you might want to be more hesitant about accepting them or make sure that they're check their availability, etc. And like this speedrunning community is relatively small compared to a lot of other gaming communities. So word gets around, like if you are known to be someone who is unreliable or, you know, has constant tech issues or doesn't set up your runner package in advance, you know, people will hear about that. So for scheduling and flow, once you have your games picked, you kind of want to arrange your schedule to kind of flow from game to game, from genre to genre, even runner to runner, just to make sure you are putting, obviously depending which time zone you're in, etc. But you want to put like the hot games in hot time slots, basically, and being able to make sure to you don't want to switch genres completely if you can help it. Obviously, again, depending on the runs you get submitted to your event. But you want to kind of keep it so that you don't drop your audience. Say you switch from like a horror game into like Mario or something. If you could switch it into something like horror light and then out into something else, it kind of keeps your audience engaged. And of course, yes, like I said, you want to consider the runner's performing style. I mean, if you're watching the games, if you're like your games committee is communicating with everyone else, and usually the games committee is also the people that are putting the schedule together as well. You don't want to have someone who has like super upbeat energy into someone who's just like kind of quiet, because that will also cause your audience to leave. And this is also why having like a well commentated video or like an idea of how your run will be during the event is super helpful for people trying to for the games committee to figure that type of information out. I always go and look up other runs by people who submit to see kind of like if they don't submit commentary with their video, what are they like when they perform? There we go. Yes, thank you.
Of course.
So for yes, with smaller and less competitive marathons, obviously you're going to get people who are new, and like I love showing off new people in marathons. Like they're like, oh my, this is my first time submitting. I'm anxious, and you want to make sure that like not everyone's going to be a seasoned performer, and you just kind of want to make sure to like stack maybe newer runners with someone who's a host who might have done a lot of hosting before, so that if the runner is all of a sudden like out of words, the host can banter with them to kind of pick up the energy of the run. Helps with people staying engaged. Oh yes, that is exactly what that is. So another thing that I really like that I've seen a lot of events do, and I do this for Lady Arcaders. Frame Patels also has it, but having a buddy system for people who might not have ever, done this before, it just helps to have someone, like if they don't have someone from their own community, so many people are willing to help out with, just being there to like check and like communicate, like ask questions about your game, or ask about how they got into it, just have like conversations basically. That really helps. Another thing that is really useful for the event quality and having people tune in, making it easy for the performers, hosts, etc., to be able to share when they're performing at an event. So this is why social media is so important. If you are in the backstage and your runner's all set up, everything's good, and you're about to like transition them over because you've done all the tech checks, just having the social media team put out a tweet and then your crew being like, hey, if you could go retweet this if you want to, here's information about your run, and then it just is an easy way for them while they're probably stressing out before the performance to just hit a really quick retweet and just share that with everyone. Oh yes, we were talking about this a little bit before, but making sure to not assign too many roles to a single volunteer, or I know some people submit like so many games. You can't accept all of them. Do not accept all of them. Please make sure to vary it up, like maybe 2 runs by one person. You don't want to stress them out. You want to make sure that they are actively like able to practice the games that they've submitted. It'll just make the event better if your volunteers are not stressed out. So it's between that and making sure that they have ample breaks, and that you have a lot of documentation about all of the roles so that no one is confused about what they have to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Yes.
Prime, for that information. Now we're going to pass it over to Limey and Varin to give information on stuff behind the scenes, primarily tech.
Yeah,
You
we're,
wanna go first?
yeah, we're gonna preface this with this in and of itself can be an entire panel. Gonna
Yeah.
be really extremely real with you. Your tech back end, how you're going to run the stream, how you're gonna capture things, where people are gonna be streaming, da 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 da. I could be up here for hours.
We could make a
actually-
whole panel
we-
on no TG alone.
We
honestly.
did
Yeah.
it was me and you, and I think you were actually also on it, Osborne. We did that podcast with Megan Swoos where we did was talk about organizing marathons. So
We still haven't filmed part 3.
we saw. I mean, I don't think we're gonna film.
Yeah,
part
that
three.
podcast went to a part 3 because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, literally.
I think the entire second episode was literally me complaining about tech stuff, and then everyone going, continue. So like,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure individually we can both talk about this for an entire panel without like repeating and overlapping.
So with that being said, the stuff on the slides here, this is like your streaming and assets and then your audio and video capture. So these are just some examples. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. There are a lot of resources available to you on the internet. You can literally Google how to start streaming, and I guarantee you're going to have 5 really large chock-full articles being spoon-fed to you by Google's weird SEO garbage vomit. So these are just some good examples. So everyone, almost shouldn't say everyone. Almost everyone knows about OBS. Even GDQ uses OBS. It stands for Open Broadcasting Software. You can check it out at obsproject.com. A lot of people start with OBS. Now, there are a lot of people who haven't, and a lot of people have opinions, but this is generally the one that is going to have the most open resources. A lot of people are going to know about it. A lot of people use it personally. Usually a really good place to start with.
Also, it has massive plugin support.
Oh, yeah, the plugins
Yeah,
are great,
plugins.
baby.
Yeah,
They're so
it can
good.
transform your production from just like, oh, this is nice, to, oh, I didn't know that you can do this in just OBS.
Yeah, there's a lot of passion that goes into the plugins and resources that communities put together for OBS, even in like the fighting game community. Lyman and I both have done, you still currently do
Yeah.
live streaming production work for fighting game things. For
Yeah.
Smash specifically, I used to do it for like just FGC for like for Tekken, Blaze Blue,
I
Street
used to
Fighter,
do
things
it.
like that.
I used to do it too.
I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I don't know you that well. Helix, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. So shout out to Helix.
No,
do that
I
too,
just,
but-
not that
Is
you were
a two-
supposed to know that. I just
Helix is a 2 GB SD card player.
Yeah, and I will
I
say,
hate that I understood that.
yeah, and I will say, if like a lot of the tech stuff is stuff that you might not understand, I can promise you, like a lot of the stuff that they're saying, the person that is tech savvy on your team will probably understand what it means.
Yeah, just
and so-
timestamp the video to this
Yeah,
part.
just
Yeah,
timestamp the
just,
video.
just
How you
pa-
do.
pause the video, open a new tab, and go to your favorite search engine, whether that be, Bing, Google, DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo,
Yeah. And just start typing. Trust me, it'll continue.
Yahoo.
Yeah, throwing it back. So there's other things that you can use to. So other things you can use to create assets. So something we call assets is going to be anything like things that pertain to your layout, or maybe things that will capture audio, so like plugins, things like that, or even things that indicate like who's speaking, all your runner names, a timer, anything like that. So those are going to be things like live split. A lot of people use live split personally for their own speed runs, but you can literally have a stylized choice for your live split and just slap that into your layout, and you just hit the start button and the stop button when they call 3, 2, 1, go, end time. And like that is pretty bare bones, like how you would track your like.
Yeah, literally for the
Timer
first 3 SS4Cs, I made a live split layout that was just like the font and like the color, and it was really nice, and that's all that there was.
Yeah.
And then like some text sources in OBS.
And for those who are wanting to jump into the deep end, we did mention nodecg/speed control. So a lot of more advanced events will use stuff like this. You can literally look it up. Speed control is a version of nodecg. You could check out nodecg at nodecg.dev. Speed control, you can just Google it. Its GitHub page will show up somewhere on the internet. There are so many people who have forked speed control to make their own layouts and back-end stuff for events that it's wild. You will find so many forked versions of speed control, and a lot of them are actually open source. People will say, hey, take this, use it for your own event with really good documentation. Don't look at mine. Please don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, the speedrun community is really good about making a lot of this stuff open source.
And accessible, very accessible.
Yes. And one thing about like nodecg is that, at least from my understanding, the people that I work with on tech, they like it's a lot to set up with nodecg, but
It can be, yes.
It can be.
It can be.
It depends
But
on how
ultimately-
in depth you want to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But ultimately, every marathon that I've worked like on the back end when it comes to like restreaming and volunteering, I love it when they use nodecg. I think it's a lot easier.
You're
for-
welcome.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's a lot easier to use.
I will also say you don't have to use
Yes.
nodecg.
Yeah, you don't
You
have
don't have
to.
to.
No,
I was
no,
gonna
no.
mention that.
Yeah, the Lady Arcaders broadcasting system that we have is all purely OBS with some plugins,
Oh,
and it
yes.
works wonderfully. You don't have to have nodecg
Nope.
knowledge like at all.
Yeah.
So that was the part with the OBS with the plugins thing, that you
Yeah.
can use a lot of plugins to do a lot of things that nodecg will do for you, but a lot of people like the control and the panels in the back end, the automation that comes with it. So it's just an option for those who maybe you have already started an event and you're just looking for ideas to elevate it to the next level. Looking at things like that, it'll seem really scary at first, but we all start somewhere.
Yeah, it is.
Good
yeah.
luck.
Yeah, I just don't look at the first few I made. Oh,
Yes.
they're
No.
terrible.
Yeah, I do. I don't think nodecg is something that you would have to do on your first marathon ever, unless
Absolutely not.
unless you
No.
conveniently have someone who like really easily knows how to
Showed
do
up,
it.
said,
Like-
I have a package ready to go. Give me your layouts and I'll do the CSS for them. And then you go,
Yeah.
I should pay you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's so much knowledge.
But it's definitely
Oh,
definitely not a requirement and not something that I'd recommend doing for your first time at the very least.
But for those vets out there, keep that in mind.
Before we move on to the next slide, do you want to mention what RTMPs are?
Oh, we're just getting
Yeah,
started, baby. Don't
yeah,
worry.
We're getting
like
started.
I'm-
We're gonna be here for a
I'm-
bit.
Yeah, we're gonna be here for like a good 10
Yeah,
minutes, and
get
then I
used to
promise
this
we'll be
slide.
done.
Yeah. Also, before we continue, I do want to mention, because I was gonna add this to the PowerPoint, but I just thought about this when we walked in. You can use like FGC stuff and just edit the CSS through that to have a lot of the text automated and auto-sized and everything. I've seen events use that. It's really janky, but it works really well if you set it up right. And just FGC scoreboard stuff plus live split. Thank me later.
Yeah, there's some good shortcuts. So also you have choices for things like everyone knows about Twitch and YouTube, but you can use either or, neither or, both. Some people, if there's alternate streaming sites that you like to use, it is your own personal prerogative. I'm not gonna tell you what to stream on, but those are obviously your best places to get started. And both have their pros and cons. They both have their eases of use. Some of them have their own I know YouTube has their own built-in dashboard thing where you can literally stream from a laptop or a computer or something, and you don't need something like OBS. So whatever floats your boat, whatever ends up working out for you. And then on the flip side, you have your audio and your video capture, which is obviously your bread and butter. How are you going to get your runners to stream? How are you going to output it to other people? So we have things that are these are just some light suggestions. Again, you can use whatever you want. I do have a note on here that I forgot to add something to this slide, but I'll get to it when we get there. So for audio and video capture, for audio specifically, you can use things called virtual audio cables. We shorten it to VACs because obviously there's only so much space on here. And then there's something that we actually use for SS4C called Video Ninja, which actually apparently also captures video while I was looking it up. I did not know that
Yeah, it
until
captures video.
that's wild. I've been using it for 3 years and didn't know that,
Yeah.
so that's wild. But those are specifically just maybe for people who are new, might want to use something like Video Ninja. What is the link for that? It's just video.ninja.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah.
I have it written down here. That's why I have notes. You can look that up. That's usually a pretty good way to capture audio that's not just straight through Discord, which was the thing I forgot to put on here. You can literally just capture everything in Discord if you wanted to.
You can use a Win audio capture plugin plus Discord, and then congratulations,
go.
you have split audio. You can mix runners and commentators individually.
And it's
Congrats.
done. Virtual audio cables is I don't want to say outdated. A lot of people still do use them for their personal use. You don't you won't see a lot of events use it anymore. But they are a way to split and fork audio, so you are able to balance audio, like balance voices to game to overall mix, things like that. Then everybody's tried and true, bread and butter, everybody's watched some anime on it probably at some point in their life, VLC Media Player, which, big pog, which actually does have an integrated multiple plugin support for OBS itself. So if you have something, called a RTMP, which is a real-time messaging protocol thing, the intricacy of it, look it up. I'm not explaining it to you because we're gonna be here for a very long time. But
Yeah, just imagine Twitch, but like private.
yeah, so
Yeah,
they're
it's literally just that.
They're basically they can be physical or cloud based. It depends on your setup. But they're a way for you to have somebody. You give somebody a fancy link and or a password. You don't need one, but you can have one set up. And then their output from their OBS or wherever they're streaming to goes to you, and then you go, okay, I'm gonna put this into OBS. You don't need to use it. You can if you'd like to. But VLC Media Player, if you do choose to do RTMPs, is your best friend.
RTMPs, if I'm not mistaken, do cost money though, right?
Well,
no.
it depends.
Depends.
Yeah,
Sounds
you,
like
you,
you
can,
can
you can run one locally in your house.
Yes.
And just port forward a couple of ports and be
Yes.
fine.
Yeah.
So then that would depend on like where you live, your internet speed, your patience, and your ability to leave your phone never on Do Not Disturb during events, because congratulations, if it runs down, you have to restart it. So that's kind of the downside. But you can also have cloud-based ones, which do tend to cost money unless you know somebody who has some kind of capability for it already.
Yeah.
Or you can just, it was listed on here for Twitch and YouTube streams for streaming, but you can actually also just use them to capture your runners. There are a lot of events who in the past couple of years have figured out, hey, if you just have people stream to what we call dummy Twitch channels that are just made, on the fly a couple months before an event, you can have them stream to that, and then there are plugins for OBS or even just through other various capture methods where you just import it into OBS and you have a generally pretty low latency, pretty clear way to capture your runners. But good luck on ads.
Yeah.
That's the only downside.
Yeah, sometimes Twitch can just give you a bunch of ads, and
Then you have
you're
to
gonna
wait.
have to wait for all the ads
Yeah.
to go
To
away.
clear, and then pray they don't show up in the middle of a really long run.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
options.
Yeah.
There are definitely options, and they're all varying levels of skill,
Yeah.
ease of access, use.
Ease of access is more
Yeah,
the
yeah.
word I would use, yeah.
Yeah. Me personally, I use Twitch channels for my marathons for No Glitch Allowed and Multithon, like dummy Twitch channels. I know a lot of
Multithon Runner 1A,
yeah.
1D,
Multithon Runner 1A
1C,
and 2A.
1D.
Yeah,
Multithon-
and they all have their different purposes. We have a system in place, and I recommend having a system in place for what each channel would capture. I know Lady Arcaders uses an RTMP.
Yes. Yeah. Runs out of my house, which is terrible for people in Australia trying to broadcast to us.
Yeah.
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 So we send them onto dummy Twitch keys.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, though you can use a mix of both. And so I know events big and small that use RTMPs. I know events big and small that use Twitch dummy channels. It's really a personal preference thing. But yeah, there's another slide for behind the scenes by Lightning and
Yippee.
Ryan. What are some helpful tips that beginners might not know for the following things? I know that.
Oh man.
You do not get us started.
So these are three big things that when I was starting out, I wish somebody had told me about, or even just there was any resources about this. So one of the big things is syncing audio and video, and everybody knows the pains of this when you're watching a stream and you see people talk and what you're hearing and what you're seeing them say because you see their mouth moving is desynced, or Mario will jump on a Goomba and then next thing you know, like you hear the sound effect 2 seconds later, something like that. Those very obvious pain points. So for syncing audio and video, you have actually a lot more resources available to you than you think that you do. So one of the built-in things inside of OBS itself is there's the advanced audio settings. So for each source that you set inside of OBS, there are things that you can set sync time to. So they have like a sync offset to them. You also have an ability to pan them to the left or right. So when you are if you build an OBS package for your runners, you can actually have those sources pan left or pan right, and then undo that when it comes to you to go out to the stream. So that way, all of voices come through the left, and then all the game audio comes to the right. So when you go to do possibly more complicated setup, if you literally look at any resources up for it, you can then adjust the audio, and you don't have to worry about, they're quiet, but the game audio is loud. You don't have to worry about that, things like that. OBS also has, I wish I had wrote this down. I was thinking about this, and I was like, oh man, I forgot to write this down. But there is another built-in tool. Oh, it's a render delay. That's what it's called. So there's something called render delay that helps with the video desync. So sometimes you'll have people who are sitting there and you're seeing them. This is a more prevalent problem in two-player or multiplayer races or multiple captures. Is that you'll have two people on camera and they have two game feeds, and one of them is synced and sounds good, and the other one is majorly desynced from the voice because all the audio is coming from one side, but they're offset from the person like on the left side of the layout versus the right side of the layout. So there's something called a render delay that is built into OBS. You literally right-click, you set a filter, and it is right there. It's called render delay. That will help you sync your audio to your video. A cool way to be able to do this is there are various timer clocks that can be built into a browser source, which is, again, another thing inside of OBS, just like you can literally go home, look at it, set it up. It's very easy to do. That if you put timers in people's feeds, and then you take a screenshot of it, you can see how long they're delayed by. And then from there, set your render delay, set your audio desync by that, and then ta-da!
Congrats.
It looks and
it looks
functions.
normal.
It looks better.
It is. This is so good that GDQ does this. If you didn't know.
Yes.
Yeah, this is what GDQ does. They literally split mic and game audio, put it through a mixer, put it back through, sync everything, and then congratulations, GDQ hotfix.
Yeah. We also have a way where we have timers. So if you've ever done anything for GDQ hotfix, or if you've ever done something for an online GDQ, you've seen the OBS package where it has a little timer in the bottom. That's what we use it for. We use it to sync your audio and video when we go to do online things. We also use it for Lady Arcaders. We use it for SS4C. We use it for, do we use it for Multithon? I don't remember. I'm going to be real. I'm very hands-off with Multithon, so I don't remember if we use it there. But I know y'all use it too. So. Or at least you had in the past. I don't remember if you do.
I don't know if we do right now, but if we don't, we're going to.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice. So
So that's just one of those things that you will never know about it until someone tells you about it or you stumble upon it. So I'm telling you now.
Yeah.
Good luck. And then your various methods of capture. If something doesn't work out for you, use something else. VLC doesn't work out for you. If using Twitch dummy streams don't work out for you. If you don't have access to an RTMP server, anything like that. Try different things. Don't just believe that you're stuck into using one thing. We're in 2024, baby. We have so many resources available to us that if you told me 10 years ago I could just do everything through OBS, I would laugh in your face because that wasn't the case 10 years ago. But
yeah, a lot of this stuff is more recent than some of the old stuff like virtual audio cables and having 3 different programs open to control one part of the stream, right?
Yeah.
The last big thing is organizing your text resources and handbooks or documentation. Document things. If you make something, make notes while you're making it, because either A, you're going to need to reference it for later, or someone else is. And there's nothing more frustrating than going and looking back at your own code and you didn't comment it and you can't figure out why you wrote it.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it and you're like, darn past me, why would you do this? So documentation and just having handbooks for your resources is going to be your best friend. That's something that sometimes Limey and I aren't the best at, and we'll do right before an event.
Hey,
I'm
you
really
didn't have to
bad
call us
about
out,
Yeah.
out like that.
but don't take our bad examples. Make notes, do resources. Someone is going to need to reference them, and you can't be available 24/7. So this is a part of the teamwork part of an event that everybody has mentioned so far, is that you're not doing this alone, so you shouldn't treat it as if you're doing it alone. The more communication you have, and for tech people, it is going to be your documentations, your tech resources, and your handbooks, the easier it gets. You can go sleepy and not worry about someone needing to call you because they forgot how to turn on an audio filter.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
I also want to mention, I want to circle back just a little bit.
Yeah,
For, like,
go for
syncing
it.
audio and video, there's a way easier way to do it than just doing everything through OBS, which is,
Yeah.
in my opinion, by far the best way. You can run everything through Streamlink, which is just Twitch into VLC, and then just keep pausing and unpausing it until everything is synced. Sometimes you might have like a 30-second delay, but like, I mean, it's easier than just like having to manually sync everything with render delays and the audio offsets.
Beautiful.
I didn't even know that existed until right now. So today I learned.
Yeah, it works.
I'm also gonna say, if you don't want to deal with like syncing audio and video, you can literally just have capture like the commentators and hosts over Discord and
just do everything in one.
broadcast from that one package. The runner basically would have the audio split left and right for commentators versus game, but they would also have a source capturing the Discord call on their end, and then you don't have to deal with any.
They just
syncing
output
whatsoever.
all of the audio. You just do all of it in one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way easier way to do
That
it.
is the
Yeah.
that is the tried and true. Like, just have the runner output everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is definitely an option. Like I said, various methods of capture. Like, if that is the way that it works for you, then that's the way
Yeah.
you want to do it.
For sure. But yeah, that is end timestamp here to send to your tech lead. If you're not doing the tech yourself, of course.
I take about 10-ish minutes. I just
That was
treat
really
my work.
fast for what we could
Yeah.
have
For what we could have done, again, this could be an entire panel on its own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're so
Beginning.
back.
Also,
Yeah.
Thanks, Jack Slayer.
Now we're going to move on to the final slide that I didn't write myself. I let Helix write this one. Communicating with others and ensuring success, focusing on what to do up to show week.
You got to talk to people. Fun fact. Sometimes it's I know it's hard talking to people. No, like unironically, sometimes it's hard. But you got to talk to people. You actually just did half my slide for me when you were like, you need documentation because then you can go to sleep and people will understand what to do. But like that was gonna be half my point here. Is like your documentation needs to be. I wrote down clear, sufficient, and easy to locate. Easy to locate is a big one. I mean, if you don't have it, people can't do their jobs. It's as simple as that. If you don't have it, you're not properly communicating. A lot of communication is done beforehand when you write these guides. And I mean, a lot of communication in general is done way before the event because you need to communicate with everyone. What's our timeline? You need to make sure people actually know what the timeline is. You need to put it in a spot that's easy to reference. You need to know what's our plan for tech. You need to put that in a spot that's easy to reference so people can know. All of your documentation, your schedule, your guides, everything needs to be placed somewhere people can easily find it. And speaking of things that people can easily find, you need to have clearly defined communication channels because otherwise that'll slow you down a whole lot. If your host doesn't know where to go to talk to your restreamer to say, hey, I'm ready for the transition, then you're going to lose valuable time. You know, you're going to lose minutes because you have communication issues. So that's a big one. I've seen what I really like to do. I stole this from. I might have stolen that from you.
I think you
I
stole
might
it
have
from
stolen
us.
this from SS4C,
Yeah.
where Speedfest now just has a live coordination channel. We literally call it live coordination, and it is for anybody who is on shift to just communicate about what they need to do and what is happening actively in the moment. And I have found that to be amazing because then, just give everyone access. You make sure that people are being on task in it, which isn't usually a problem because people want to get this done. People want to get it done cleanly. And then everyone can just chat. Whoever is producing, your restreamer, your setup tech, your host, whoever, people can just talk, make sure everything's good to go, and you don't have to fiddle around with 500 Discord channels looking for the information that you need. Discord pins are great, by the way. You should probably use those for pinning your documentation. Those are very helpful.
And having your resources in multiple places, so like having it in Discord, having
Yeah.
it in a Google Drive, like making sure everybody has their own copies of everything. That's also like a good, having it in multiple places but still easy to find. So no matter what place you're looking for, you'll still find it.
And I think it was Osborne who mentioned your documentation should be out weeks in advance. So that way people have time to review it, and then they can communicate with you about the questions that they have, and then you can answer them before it's go time. Again, it's just so people understand what they're doing better before it's actually time to do it. And you should also have at least one staff member present at all times, like a high-level staff member, so that they can make and communicate the high-level decisions. There will be points where things need to happen right away, and if you don't have someone who can make the decision and then communicate it, you're stuck. And then like, bad things happen. You're sitting on the break screen for half an hour because you don't have a plan. You need someone who can make a plan and clearly communicate it.
Well, would you say that there's like a distinction between like having a specific like producer role, whether that person is staff or not, and just or versus like just having a dedicated staff member on shift at all times, or is it functionally the same thing?
I think it depends on the marathon.
It
It
depends.
totally depends on your personnel.
Like, I guess I'll speak specifically from a GDQ experience. Like, Helix and I can make decisions for like, you know, if we need to specifically, you know, when we need to start a run, or if, you know, a piece of content on the stream needs to change slightly, but we wouldn't entirely cut a run or anything, or add something like that, because we can make decisions for what immediately goes out to the broadcast, but there are other people on the team that we need to communicate with for if a runner doesn't show up, or if there's a major tech issue, should we skip this run, should we reschedule it? So it would entirely depend on your structure. You would probably want a higher staff to make those kind of decisions, but if you did trust somebody like a producer or something to make an immediate broadcast decision, then you could have something like that.
Yeah, and something that GDQ has done this event that has been really helpful is just having more people on call who have the authority to make those decisions. Therefore, communication is easier, therefore things happen faster, and the marathon is better presented. It's been a really big help, this event.
Yeah.
And you want to communicate well, but you also want to make sure you're not stepping on people's toes. You know, let your people do their jobs. I know that's in this slideshow somewhere. Let your volunteers do their jobs. Don't boss them around, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
communicate well,
they're
but
volunteers.
don't micromanage necessarily.
Yeah. And that's actually really good. Are you finished, or I don't want to?
I think so. My thoughts are a little
All right,
disorganized
cool.
here. I apologize for that.
No worries. You're good. You're fine.
Am I allowed to tell a short, funny, smaller marathon, more casual marathon story?
Make it quick.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
I already know what this is.
So at the last SS4C, right? SS4C is pretty small. It's pretty casual, but it's done by like tight-knit friends. One of our producers, Clayton CMM1215, lost us like 40 minutes because we were in the middle of like a producer transition, and so like no one really noticed that he was just like talking, like stalling on the host mic, and the run has been set up. Everyone's like, okay, cool, like it's gonna started, because no one like checked in because it was a transition for producers, and we lost 40 minutes off of that at one time in one transition.
Yeah.
I think
I was asleep for this, by the way. I just
We just found about this right now.
I got
Yeah.
a DM and was like, what is this story you're going
Yeah, I was getting off of being the producer on shift, and then someone else was getting on.
Oh, no.
And we thought it was just started.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
That's lack of
Communication
communication.
is important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Communication is really
So
important.
I have two
It's
notes about this. People going off shift need to communicate with those going on shift. And also, you need to make sure your volunteers know that they need to communicate. If they don't know to communicate, information is not going to get where it needs to go. So it's something, just make sure they know help is available when they need it. Make sure they know that they need to communicate as well.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that, Helix. And that kind of goes into the final part, or the final few parts of this the presentation. It's showtime. The event is here. What do you do? Well, first,
Congratulations,
That's
you
so real.
win.
I'm gonna repeat that into the mic. Jaxler said cry.
Cry.
Yeah,
panel over. Yeah,
we
but-
peaked.
But yeah, but like you have to be present first and foremost. Like it's important that you're present at the event. Like you as the main organizer, you gotta make sure things go smoothly. And maybe you're not the one that is assigned to be in charge in that very moment, but being present is still a very valuable thing. Even in moments where you might not be directly in charge, because like it's good to know that they're like the person who created this marathon is present, is paying attention to when things might go wrong, and also letting people do their jobs and be in charge. And that'll reflect greatly on you and a lot of volunteers and other staff members and runners and pretty much and viewers will like maybe that might make them feel more comfortable knowing that like the person who created this marathon is here and overlooking everything. And you need to make sure there are dedicated staff or roles to being able to fill in gaps if needed if a volunteer is unable to complete their shift for one reason or another. A lot of marathons reuse like people who are already in a specific role to fill in when someone drops, like ping hosts to fill in for another hosts. Some people use like a backup system. I think a backup system is really nice. Or some people like fall over to their to the hosting leads if there's no backups available. And so that's also a reason why you saw on the lead slide where I mentioned each and every lead that they all ended in parentheses S, because it's very nice and very valuable to have like multiple leads on a specific role, so that like if push comes to shove, the host lead needs to fill in for something. There's not just one person that's falling back on that, and because that's a lot of pressure. And you don't want to step on the toes of other staff and other volunteers. You've entrusted them with their jobs for a very specific reason. Let them do their jobs. And it's not to say that like help isn't appreciated. Of course, you just want stuff to go well. But you need to know when it's time to let other people do their job and when it's time for you to step in and communicate that with other people. And I wanted to, there's two parts of the slide, but before we go into the second part, I did want to open up a question to the floor, or to the other people in the panel here. And that question is like, when it is show week and when the marathon is actively happening, like what is the mindset that you have? And what is it that you're actively like focusing on most as the marathon is actively happening? And anyone can answer this. It's a heavy question, but
I think my answer is going to be anything and everything all at once, but watch out. For me, I think because I have been doing this for so long, to me, I have 30 tabs open in my brain at all times, and like Helix can attest to this because this is what we do as directors. But for me, I'm kind of thinking about anything and everything all at once. But if you are specifically in one role, so like hosting, moderation, tech, or even necessarily like, games committee / scheduling, you can kind of like hone your focus in on that, make sure those things are going well, because the more people who are focused on the their specific skills that they would bring to the table, the easier it is for those who watch the overarching event, like the main event staff, the lead organizers, can focus on making sure everything as a whole looks good when all the rest of the cogs of the machine are turning well.
The thing that we directors always say is that you need a certain amount of ADHD to be able to do this job.
That's so
Yeah,
true.
that's
It's so true.
It's unbelievably true.
It is true.
I would say focus on your strengths, especially if you have ample support in other areas. Then you can focus on your strengths. You can stick to what you are good at, and then other people can stick to what they are good at, and that all comes together to make a cohesive product.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Personally,
else?
I'm not a GDQ director like them, but but like for me, like with my events, because I work with them on the regular.
Mm-hmm.
I personally I let them do their thing. There's usually a hangout chat. I'm just sitting there. I'm making sure all the Discord channels are always up to date. I'm reading everything. If anyone needs help, I'm gonna be there. I can shadow like volunteers that are newer or like that need that support. But I'm not trying to overstep. I'm not trying to get on anyone's toes. I'm not trying to boss anyone around. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm everywhere that I need to be at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good transition to the next point, unless you want to make a specific comment.
I was just going to say there's a lot of also like people management that goes into like the lead up, like right before the event to the actual event, and just making sure that everyone has what they need to do their job, and to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And like even just during the event, putting out fires. If someone, for example, you think they might have had a bad experience or something, you might need to reach out to someone. So that type of thing too, to just keep in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a joke. This is a joking way of putting it, but you got to be when you're the dedicated person in charge. You got to be comfortable with annoying people and telling people what to do and when to be at a certain time. Obviously, be respectful, but like you gotta get comfortable with telling people what to do because you're the person in charge. And that kind of transitions pretty well into the next sites. And so there's going to be producers or dedicated staff. They'll make sure that the show runs smoothly, and that everyone's present for their jobs. This could be you. This could be other staff members. There's going to be a different person in charge. And at any given moment, there's going to be shifts that for these dedicated people that are going to be in charge. And all the things that are going to be actively happening in the event includes promoting the event live on social media for all the runs that are happening and all the cool moments that happen on stream. People on setup are going to be setting up upcoming runs. Restreamers are going to be restreaming the event directly from the broadcast machine. And hosts are going to be engaging presence throughout the marathon. And there's going to be you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. So if a runner drops, if a volunteer can't make it, it's all like those things are going to happen. It is very rare that you go an entire marathon without those things happening.
If you do, I want to come work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the best of marathons will have like a volunteer drop or a runner drop, and you're going to have to find some way to back that up. And one thing that is very note is that while it is your marathon and it is important that you're there, please don't burn yourself out. It is unhealthy and unrealistic for you to be at your desk for the entirety that like the marathon is going on. You need food, you need water, you need to just step away from your computer and walk around for a little bit. And you ultimately do need rest. Like you're gonna need to step away from the computer, and so that's why you leave other people in charge.
That is crucial.
Yeah,
you
that's
need to step
important.
away and be able to come back mentally sharper. If you just try to shotgun the whole event, by the end of it, you're not going to be making smart decisions.
You really aren't.
And you'll make
Yeah.
a lot of compromises that you're going to regret later because you're going to see the quality of the event decline over a weekend, a week, whatever, because you are really tired and you start to make more poor decisions. Which that's not to say that you won't make them anyway, even if you do rest, because it does take a toll on you mentally. And that's the other thing is like don't burn yourself out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mental as much as it is physical to do things.
Exactly.
I think I'm going to really quick take this time to mention, I don't know if we've even talked about this, but plenty of marathons now are not doing overnights
Oh,
for
thanks.
this
Yeah.
reason.
Yes.
Don't
Don't
do
do
overnight.
it.
Especially
It's not
if
worth
it's your
it.
first one, do not do
It's
it.
not worth
Just, like,
it.
stick to like 10
Learn
hour
from
days.
our mistakes.
Don't do
Yeah.
overnights.
All of our mistakes.
I will
12 to 16 hours and go to bed.
Yeah.
Before like in even in the early pandemic days, but before the pandemic, overnights were kind of like the norm for marathons.
Absolutely.
And
Everybody thought
it
you
is
had to do it.
it is not the norm anymore.
Your
It is not.
viewership doesn't even suffer. Like,
Yeah.
actually, like we've looked at the stats. Everything
Yeah.
is fine if you just don't do overnights.
I-
Take 8 to 12 hours to like sleep and then come back. and be
Exactly.
refreshed.
A while back, I looked at the stats for No Glitches Allowed, all the overnights that we did when we used to do overnights. We didn't get any donations during those times. Like it's very rare that you're gonna have overnights be worth it, and so I would just don't do it. I would recommend not doing
It
it.
requires so much more effort and so
Yeah,
much
it
more
does.
support and so much more personnel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
There's pros and cons to overnights. Definitely weigh them to your own event, your niche. If you are trying to broadcast to a community that has many people in different countries, maybe running overnight is beneficial to you to include those people from those communities. But if your main demographic or your main volunteer crew is going to be people based in your own country, then a lot of times it's really just easy to run in your own hours of like 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. or anything like that.
Yeah, SS4C was lucky because we had like 3 Europeans and then also just like 4 a.m. DGens.
Yeah.
Us, yeah.
True.
Our weakest point was like
And-
afternoons.
It looks like Kai might want to say something. at this point.
I realized there was something that I didn't include that I wanted to mention when I saw that promoting the event live on social media thing. If you want to promote your event, you can send a message to speedrun.com and ask to be featured on the front page. You can also now, speedrun.com has a section where you can literally do an article about your event and what it's supporting, and it will also get featured on the front page. You can also email other, reach out to other big organizations or streamers and ask them for raids considerations at the end of when they're done, if it might overlap with your event. Just anything you can kind of do in advance to promote your event, like make sure you're doing like countdowns on social media, just anything you can do to kind of advertise to people that your event is happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I was gonna say real quick about the like health and mental health and everything of all of your volunteers and staff. What SS4C does, and I love this, and I'm gonna continue doing this for as long as I do marathons. We have affiliate on the channel, so we use that money literally just as a DoorDash fund for staff.
Yeah.
So we
Unironically.
we're sitting down all day, and then we go to bed and we sit down all day. We just use that affiliate money to get like Burger King or like local restaurants and stuff.
Exactly.
And it's super nice, and it helped like the morale like tenfold.
Yeah, you really got to focus on your own health. You got to focus on the health of other people, your staff, your volunteers, and I think volunteer health and the mental well-being of your volunteers and your volunteer comfort is like one of, if not like, it should be on the high list of priorities.
It should be your highest priority.
Yeah,
I
High,
think.
highest
yes.
priority.
Yes.
Like it should be your
Safety
high.
and comfort.
100%,
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Like you obviously you intend on going back to like making more events in the future. Maybe even your
Or
staff.
not, you know,
Maybe even your staff team like wants to help out as well. But like if a volunteer has a bad experience, like they're just gonna not volunteer for your event anymore.
And that stuff
Yeah,
gets around.
It'll-
yeah,
It
and
does
word
get
goes
around.
out. Like,
Word
we're
gets out.
Yeah,
Same
like, they
thing
made
with
me do
runners.
13 hours. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like staff can forgive you, you can forgive yourself, but if your volunteers have a bad time, like they're just not going to come back. It's much easier for them to just not come back.
Yeah.
Like-
and they'll tell other people.
And they'll
to
tell other
not do
people.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, remember
and
what we said? How word gets around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets around for you too. Like that's the thing is
Yeah.
that like the grapevine includes you. You kind of, a lot of people think of themselves as outside looking in, but you are a part of the in. You are a part of all of it that's going on. So it will, whatever you do reflects on you and your group. And that's the representation you give out to other people, whether that is through your volunteers, through your organization yourself, or even just through your broadcast. Like all of it represents you. So think about how you want other people to view you as a group, as a person, as an organization. When you're keeping these things in mind, you know, for taking breaks, you know, putting out stuff for social media, even just like your broadcast itself. It does. It is a reflection of you,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. And one last thing I'll touch on, going back to like the trusting people part. I get it. Like it's a marathon that you like conceived, and you recruited people to help you with, and like it's a project of passion, and it's something that you're really proud of, and maybe you want to be on top of it at all moments, but you gotta step back and let people do their jobs. And I get it because it feels like you're like giving your baby to another person and just be like, can you watch them while I go eat? But like you gotta let it go. You gotta let it go. Like
The bird's got to fly a little bit. Right?
exactly. But yeah, our last point, the post-mortem. The process does not end once you hit stop streaming.
You can take a break, but it does not end.
Yeah, exactly. Congratulations, the event is done. Hopefully it was successful. But, you know, what do you do now? Like, what are you going to do next? Are you going to do this with the same team, with a different team? Was it a one-off event? Was it a recurring event that you want to do? But regardless, if you plan on organizing more, you're going to have to reflect on what went wrong and what went right. First and foremost, feedback forms for viewers, runners, and volunteers. Those are common practice. Some marathons don't do it, but I think more and more marathons are doing it now, where it's just like it can be through Google Forms or like any other form system that you find. Like ask people for feedback. Like the viewer, the runner, the volunteer, even your own staff, those are all 4 very different experiences. And you want to be able to know exactly how they felt, what things that they think you're doing right, and if you're doing something wrong, you want to know about it so that you can improve it in the future and make sure that people aren't like suffering with these issues again. And you want, like, it's especially if it's your first time doing a marathon, like you're gonna screw something up. Like don't expect it to be perfect. Like you're going to like make a mistake, and that's like, and hopefully it's not like a dreadful mistake, but like that's okay. You're gonna have to improve on that, and like people will want to, and if people truly like your team and they like the experience, like they're gonna want to see that improve, and you're gonna want to make that improvement for them. And that includes for viewers, runners, volunteers, staff, everyone that's involved in the project. Make sure you schedule a post-event meeting with your staff to discuss what to keep doing and what mistakes were made during the process. It is very beneficial to just get into a voice call with everyone that's on staff and discuss exactly what the future plans are and what you can do to improve in the future. What went wrong. Usually it goes like feedback forms, like closed feedback forms, then discuss at the meeting what the feedback forms say. And
Or you can do it where you have one for just staff that notes that you've taken during the event, the things that, like you want to mention, and then you can take the feedback forms and then work from there. Or you can do whatever.
yeah,
way
you can do
want.
it. You can do it in a lot of different ways. And remember, well, I thought there was another thing back there. But remember, no marathon is perfect. It's your first time organizing, and so mistakes are going to be made. And there's going to always be room for improvement. Even the biggest marathons in the world will always have room for improvement. Like, you're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be one or two things that could be improved slightly, and that's okay. You're going to have to reflect on that and try again and try and do better the next time. It will only grow and hopefully be better every single time that you do it. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
This GDQ is a great example. This, I think most people can agree, has been a fantastic event, and I have been taking so many notes in my head of things that we can improve upon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything like specific that you think like is like usually a common talking point for like post-event meetings that you find yourself having? And this is open to anyone.
I think my biggest piece of advice for post-mortem and just the way you think about it is give yourself the same grace you would give somebody else. That a lot of people are very harsh on themselves, and I'm not going to lie. I have ADHD and anxiety. I have a lot of problems with my self-confidence, but I try to give myself the same grace I would give for, like Limey or even Clay going 40 minutes over for something apparently that I would give them, because if I'm going to be quiet, Jaxler.
It's my bad. I encouraged him. I'm sorry.
You're nice to other people, be nice to yourself too. That a lot of you are human, you are going to make mistakes, and you must look at these in a lens of actually being able to work on things, but also being realistic with it. That it's not going to be perfect. That's it. It's not going to be perfect, and never expect it to be, because you will be disappointed because you are not going to be perfect. No one is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to mention that these meetings, like, a lot of stuff can go wrong. They should not be a pity party. You guys should absolutely hype up whatever accomplishments you have. Anything you've done good or done better than you think you would do, hype that up, because that's just as important as things to improve on for the next time as well.
And do your best to not point blame at other people. Like very rarely is there any situation in which like pinpointing the person that did it is a beneficial thing. And so most of the time you just, well, we did this wrong. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Let's just not do it next time and try to improve on it in the
There's
future.
a give and take to that. Like sometimes problems are like, if you help people identify what went wrong, they'll know not to do it for next time. But there is a difference between being like, hey, I'm trying to do this to help you, and hey, I'm blaming you. There is a fine line. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you.
To talk about less about more, talking with your team post-event, you also want to make sure, if you're fundraising with a charity, to reach back out to the charity and inform them how the event went, and just send some nice words to them to just thank them for their help, etc. Making sure to post on social media with your total. Even if you want to put out a press release or something as well, to just kind of get some more eyes on, the amazing work that you did as a team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my
All of
favorite
those
thing
things
to
help.
close an event, is literally send that tweet and go to bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
I love the tweet, and then just
Tweet, done.
Yeah.
Bed.
true
Yeah.
combo.
Yeah.
And
Nothing makes me happier than closing my 12 Speedfest tabs at the end of an event.
Like, if you've never like been involved with a marathon, you get to the very end, you close all your tabs. Please do
it's
it.
so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
It is one of the best feelings
It is
in
a
the entire
euphoric
world.
feeling. It's
Like,
so
I'm being so genuine.
It's like clocking out of work on a Friday and or whatever your end of week is, and going into your weekend, but like times 100, unironically.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
so
It's like summer break, no summer homework, no more classes. You've graduated. You're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Until inevitably 4 months later when you have to do it again.
And after you have the post-mortem meeting, I don't know, take a break for a few months.
Yeah.
Like,
have a celebration party
have a
after. That's what we
celebration.
do.
Yeah,
we for SS4C, we go
SS4C
hard.
has
We go
after
so hard.
parties.
Yeah, we do.
I don't want to get too much into it, but like
Some of the
it's
best
incredible.
event memes are after the event
Yeah.
and the post-mortem
True.
party. So
Those are really good for morale, and morale
Yes,
is important.
it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, morale is super
Yeah.
important, especially because, like I said, we've been going for like 10 years. So anything that we can do to help us keep going, get us closer together, is so welcome.
All right. But yeah, after that, that's it. Yeah. And then rinse, and then like rinse, recycle, repeat. I forgot.
Yeah, just do it again.
Yeah, do it again
Make another one.
and make it
Do
better.
it again,
next
but
time.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it again, but
Alright.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to the timestamp 000,
Yeah.
you can just do this all again, and then you can use this to help you out.
All right, but yeah, that is pretty much it. Q&A. Does anyone have questions?
And there's no wrong questions.
Yeah. What's your name?
My name is Brofar.
Brofar. All right.
Sorry. So I had an anime convention in Canada, and it's a little bit different, obviously.
Mhm.
But I know for us, we collect certain demographics, certain information that we present to acquire sponsors and sponsorships. I'm curious as to, in this context, what kind of information do sponsors in this area expect to help them decide to sponsor your event?
What kind of information do sponsors expect to help them sponsor your event? Okay. Anyone have more detail on that than I do?
Most of these events do not have sponsors. They are almost entirely volunteer run with no financial backing whatsoever.
Yeah,
So that's a hard one to answer.
Sometimes you will get incredibly fortunate in which you will work with a charity who will give you a certain amount of funding, or they'll be able to be like, well, we'll donate certain things to give out for prizes, or we'll. I've worked in-person events too, so I know this doesn't necessarily pertain to online marathons most of the time, but sometimes companies will, like local companies will see that you're having an event and they'll they'll donate things for prizes or tech or anything like that. For if people were looking to get sponsors for their event, usually just reaching out to companies or sending out or having a media package to send out is
exactly.
101.
Media package
Having
is
a
very
media
important.
package with all
Yeah.
your stats, like how long you've been in an event, how many concurrent viewers do you normally get, how do your donations do, like what charities have you raised money for in the past, your community outreach, things like that. Those are usually like the 5 biggest things that when you are trying to look for even just collaborations or sponsors that they want to look at is usually the good start, and then they'll be like, hey, do you have this other information, and then it kind of opens the door to continue on from there. But as Helix said, a lot of this is very, very grassroots. It is a bunch of homies probably either sitting in somebody's house or in a Discord call trying to do this. So sponsors aren't necessarily always people's goals, but that is a great question and something to look forward to as you continue to make an event and grow it.
Definitely.
Yeah, you took most of my points. I was going to say a lot of events, especially first-time events, just straight up don't have sponsors. And having a sponsor package is super, super nice, especially if you've been at an event for like 2 or 3 events. It's not too hard to put one together. We made like a rough one for SS4C after 8, and then we had speed stuff for Trans Lives. And that's how we reached out to Equality Texas, and they helped us out with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, that was after 8 events.
All right.
Yeah, it's very helpful to have a media kit just with your stats. Like, obviously this is if you've been running an event more than once, but just having like your average viewers, lifetime views, hours watched, followers, etc., along with like your mission statement, how much money you raised at previous events is all extremely helpful for talking to sponsors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Did that answer your question? Wonderful. Tempest?
So, someone that's one time done a marathon organization of my own, you should probably remember you.
Of course.
I feel like one of the biggest things that is majorly important is that if you're trying to make it a charity event, and this is going to reflect on a mistake, the mistake that I made. So what happens if your charity in question is not necessarily associated with something like Tiltify? What are some good examples of that? Like, I know one way to Tiltify says that if your charity in question is not on their list, you can have them contact that and stuff. But like, let's say that's not an option. Let's say that you have to like try and figure out a different kind of donation system. What would you do?
Okay, I'll repeat the question just so in the recording. If you can't use Tiltify and you need to figure out a different donation system, what would you do? I almost exclusively work with Tiltify, but I know that Helix does other things that aren't Tiltify as well.
So my answer is ask. Midwest Speed Fest has our own donation tracker. It's a fork of the GDQ tracker, and we will just straight up, events will come to us and be like, hey, can we borrow your donation tracker? And I'm like, absolutely, heck yeah, let me send you some documentation. You can use it for your event.
The
You
same
use
with-
it for your event.
Yeah, the same with Powered with Pride. We used I think they still do, use a old fork of the GDQ donation tracker, in which we have to contact the charity. We have to get some form of PayPal or anything like that to do that. My other piece of advice is look and see if they have a website or other way they take donations. And sometimes you can collaborate with them to find ways to be like, hey, I might not necessarily have something like Tiltify or a donation tracker to necessarily really accurately track donations, but they might be able to work with a media team to be able to give you that information. If you were to have an event for them, they'd be able to relay that information to you as you raise money for them. You also don't necessarily need to like read donations on stream. It used to be the norm that you would just raise money and people would just chit chat and talk about the charity, and there would be like no donations read. So that's also an option. You don't necessarily need to have hosts that read donations. You could just be real chill and you raise a couple $100 for a local charity and you did it through their website.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you've already asked, which is the main thing, always ask. For Tiltify, it's just getting their PayPal information, and then now they're tracked on Tiltify. It's not that hard. But if they're not responsive, it's gonna sound really bad. I would just give up. I would find a charity that's similar. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Unfortunately, that's the truth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's like if you really want to have the charity involved and they're not responsive, they will probably not become responsive. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Just look for like contact information, emails, and if that's not working, just go to the next one down the list.
Yeah,
Alright.
whatever you do, don't accept that money into your own
No,
account.
Yes,
not-
don't
do not-
do
don't
never
have that.
do
Do not do
that.
that.
Don't hold the money.
Do not do that. No.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Just want to clarify for anyone
Alright.
watching this video later.
Sounds good.
Never quite had charity, part of it going as first intended.
Yeah.
And I would never wish this mistake upon anyone else. That really, because my hope is one of these days to try it again, and this time make it for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you have to adapt and things will change. And unfortunately, not every charity is going to work out the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
piece of information would have been good to know for some people 6 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions before we finish? Yeah. What's your name?
I'm Ice. So last summer, I ran my own speedrun marathon,
Mm-hmm.
and we just did it within our own game.
Mm-hmm.
In the future, I'm thinking about branching out and allowing other people to submit other games.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, so I know a lot of people in my game, my community,
Yeah.
and I guess it's just more of I'm hesitant and or scared to include literally anyone just to submit into it. I guess that's just what I have to say. If there's anything
Yeah.
to say on that.
So I guess the question you're asking is like, are you afraid of like bad actors like getting into your marathon like via like running or?
It's more of just a bunch of people that I don't know.
Oh, okay. So like, how do you go comfortable with like people you don't know being involved in like your marathon essentially? Is that like purely through runners or like through volunteers as well? Kind of both. Okay, so I don't know because like me personally, I kind of came into the speedrunning scene pretty fine with strangers, but like that's just me personally. But like I don't know if anyone else on this panel has advice for that.
Talk a little bit about that, but like you do have to put a certain amount of trust in people who you might not know. It helps if you're trying to find your lead staff, like to reach out to other event organizers to, like we said, to see if they know anyone who can help you out. Because generally, if they've worked on another event and they're friendly with people, like you can trust that they will probably do a good job. You probably don't want to grab someone who it's like their first time to help you lead your first event, you know.
Yeah.
But it does require a certain amount of trust, and sometimes things happen and you end up with someone who's, you know, not ideal for your event, but it's just you
Yeah.
kind of have to work with it,
And
and
there-
you know not to deal with them next time.
Yeah, there will inevitably be moments where you accept someone and then you have a bad experience with them, but you had no foresight to that. You
Yeah.
couldn't have known. Or like worse, like there have been many marathons where like there is a person that's on stream and then later you realize that they're like a problematic figure or like they're
Yeah.
a bad actor and you
Yeah.
didn't realize and you accepted that to them. And like those mistakes are inevitably going to be made. Like you can't be blamed for that. But the most you can do is like just not accept them again or like ban them from your event if it really needs to go that far. There have been people in events that I've organized that that they simply are not that great at their job and they aren't willing to learn and they've had a bad experience, and I don't ban them, but like I just don't accept them for that role next time, or I don't like it's like that's completely a valid thing for you to do.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like the people who you're closely working with, like your staff and other like other leads, like that is ideally should be people that you're familiar with, like because you're having a lot more trust in them. But when it comes to open application for volunteers and runners, there is a certain level of trust that you do need to put in what is functionally strangers. Like sure, you have Speedrunning in common, but not much else. You don't know that at least. But there is a certain level of trust you got to put in them. And
Yeah.
if you make a mistake, you can like reject them later.
Yeah,
So,
it also helps to vet their social media, anything public. Having someone just go through the last like 6 months with some search terms that you maybe wanted to avoid to make sure that they're not problematic. That helps a lot. Just do your research about people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna also mention if you have anyone who's a lot more knowledgeable than you, who's been around the marathon scene for a while, they know generally like a list of names to avoid. I'm pretty sure all of us have that.
Yeah.
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 I want to make it very clear. It is not like a weird blacklist that goes around. It is the thing that we mentioned earlier where word gets out. So, you know,
Yeah.
if there are extremely problematic members of a community, we all generally tend to know about them, or bad volunteers or anything like that. I will say that in terms of supporting your event and you as a whole, start with people who are close to you, like friends, and go from there, because they're going to be your best sanity check and your best like vibe check for people. Because sometimes you'll kind of be like, oh, well, you know, I don't really know, maybe they're just really awkward, and then your friends are like, no, they're whack. No.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can always just start with people who are close to you, people in your community like you had before, just your community. Start from there and then branch out and accept other people, and then have yourselves as a support system for that. So you don't have to worry about going it alone. You can just start with your friends. As I sit here with literally all of my friends right
literally.
here.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
All four of them.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that after that first event, after you sort of rip off the band-aid, so to speak, you will have so many more connections at your disposal
Yeah,
for next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also like just like participating in events, like as a runner or as a volunteer, like you grow connections and you're able to see who is a good person and who is like a bad actor, someone that you might want to avoid, you know.
Even just through looking at volunteer chats and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
the best
Yeah.
one actually is participate in a couple of events.
Yeah,
first
just
to make
be
some
in the
connections
space
that way. Yeah.
Exactly. And honestly, I'll put this offer towards anyone who's here and also anyone who's watching the video. If you guys have a games list and you don't really know a good place to start with like vetting or anything, just send the game list to me, send the schedule to me. I'll take a look. I'll tell you if there's anyone who you should avoid.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
I'm happy. Yeah,
same, like,
literally
reach
any of
to
us.
you.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure any of us
Yeah,
would.
reach out.
Yeah.
So literally anybody here.
Yeah, just
Like-
reach out. But yeah, we have around like 3 more minutes. I'll do you first. What's your name?
Space Cats United.
Space Cats United, and then we'll close out with your question.
So something that the question I have is, I have an event in mind that I want to do, and I kind of want it to be like a long-term thing. But I have a lot of anxiety about presenting this idea to someone and then having them like kind of take it and run with it, and not be the person who's like organizing it and managing it and that kind of thing. In the sense that like I start and I say we're gonna do this cool thing, and then somehow I get like not forced out, but just like kind of put on the back burner, and then it's like, yeah, I guess they helped out with that.
Yeah. So you're essentially afraid of like presenting an idea to someone and them taking it and running with it and like making it their own rather than like a collaborative process. Okay. Yeah. And so I would say like one of the most important things is to be very clear as to what their role is in the marathon. Like when you're presenting an idea to someone and you want them to help out, like very clearly, like set up the expectations of how much you want them to help out, what exactly you want them to help out with. That will, in essence, like kind of mitigate that kind of possibility. And at the end of the day, it is really just communication. If you see that someone is like overstepping their bounds and taking too much responsibility, or taking stuff that you wanted to do and like making it their own, or even presenting this as their idea, like that's something that you're gonna have to talk to them about and make a decision about whether or not you want to continue working with this person if they're gonna keep doing that. And that is a bit of a risk that you take. I don't know if anyone else wants to add more to that.
I think this just again circles back to starting things with people you trust, people you know, people you respect, people you know will listen to you. I do not recommend going and finding strangers on the internet and starting an event together. Look at the people in your community. Look at the people in, fellow Discords or wikis or anything that like IRC chats, anything like that. I probably just dated myself by saying that. But
I felt that.
I felt it deep in my bones. But that start from there, and a lot of times you probably won't run into that. It's usually you have bad actors and people who do stuff like that when you're just chit-chatting with people and you have an idea thrown out there and then somebody just kind of jumps the gun on your idea. And that sometimes happens. I've had that happen to me, or even just for like speedrun ideas or niche like relay ideas if you're not doing an event but do a relay instead. It happens. But usually if you just look to your inner communities and start with people you trust, you're not going to have that problem.
Yeah. So people you trust and clear communication and expectations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Start your boundaries.
exactly.
Boundaries are
Boundaries.
so important. I was scrolling through our DMs. I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna say a good way to just reach out to people is just being super clear, like everyone has been saying. Like for example, this DM from Oz, asking if I want to help out with something, literally just says, "Hey, do you know anyone that could be a Street Fighter 6 TO for this night on this day?" And that's all I needed because I know I'm not gonna be super involved. I don't want to like run with the idea of like, oh, I should do a Street Fighter 6 tournament in a marathon, right?
Yeah.
But like, I helped out. I was ATO. I found someone else, right?
Yeah.
And he was just super clear, and I was super clear with what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
That's all.
Exactly. So
Communication absolutely helps.
yeah,
so much.
exactly. It really does. And to close out, we'll have your question. What's your name? Omax. All right.
And I've been on both ends of both, like, kind of helping out with the speedrun marathons and submitted to a number of them.
Uh-huh.
And so I guess my question is, and kind of piggybacks off Ice's, is like, what are kind of different ways of handling like rejecting runs? And stuff? Because it's something where I know kind of the standard thing is just to be kind of as vague as possible. Not as vague as possible, just saying like, okay, we decided not to go with this, or we decided to go with this instead.
Okay.
But like, I guess like, how do you try and avoid people from ending up in a situation where they're submitting the same game over and over again?
Yeah.
Not knowing why it's not getting in.
Yeah. Okay.
Having an appeal system or something.
Yeah, I get that. So just for the recording, how do you deal with rejecting runs and informing runners of their rejection status and like why they're getting rejected? I mean, the simple way is having an option for them to ask for feedback. I know that GDQ in recent events has started implementing that. I've been wanting to implement that for my events as well. That is the easiest way to do it and the most professional way to do it. Like, it's very susceptible to like unprofessionalism or like personal bias if you like have them DM you and ask you why or anything like that. But by using like a form in which they can specifically ask for a feedback on a specific submission that they did, and why it didn't get in or why you didn't really like it or chose other stuff over it. Not only is it like more professional for you to use a form and then respond to them that way, but you can also show the form to other mods or other people on your staff or other people that were involved in like the rejection process for that game and other people that judge that game, and you can all like create like a collective message together to that person. And so it's not just like your opinion and your bias, it is everyone's opinion and the specific reason why you all collectively agree to not have that game in the marathon.
Yeah, exactly. I personally try and avoid messaging people on Discord if they come up to me first and they're like, hey, like, why did my game not get in? Do you have like feedback or anything? I usually ignore that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Just because it's
yeah.
like Oz said, it's a lot of bias that could be part of it, and a lot of the time it's not my decision. But I do get a lot of messages with that because I'm just involved in a lot of stuff, and I just try to avoid answering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I literally, if someone asks that, I tell them send an email, basically. If you have a form, you have an official, ideally, from like a promotional standpoint, you have a domain name or like a Gmail address or a dedicated email address for your marathon, so that when they send in the form, you can reply from that email and ideally get everyone's notes from the games committee about why that game got rejected to formulate a answer with constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to do it, so that you're not singling, so that, I mean, it's still people, if you're the event organizer, some people just don't understand and they will be mad at you anyway, and that's just, you can't avoid that. But you can put it in a more neutral form of feedback for them to look at.
Right.
I think there's one last thing I want to mention, and then I'm going to skedaddle because I want to eat food.
I'm
Yeah.
so hungry.
You're not responsible for people's emotional reactions to being rejected. There is a personal aspect to it in which people will feel slighted, but you're not responsible for that, and that is something they must deal with on their own, and you're not their therapist.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be very upset when they don't make it into something, especially if it's like, they're like, oh, my homies are running this, and then you reject them, and then they're like, they take it really personally. It's not your problem.
Yeah.
Like, it ends up being that way sometimes, and sometimes you have to be the person to be realistic of what are the goals for your event, how does it fit your schedule, does it fit with other things, and it comes with time, but that is just the other thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about when they're rejecting runs, is that some people are going to take it hard, and that's not your problem. They
Yeah.
need to learn how to deal with that in their own time.
Yeah, you should present the feedback in like a sympathetic way and like
Yes,
keep their
don't
feelings
be
involved.
rude
Yeah,
about
but,
it.
like,
But,
don't be mean, but,
but
like absolutely.
if
Yeah.
they're like
Yeah.
distraught, torn, subtweeting you on Twitter, they need to go seek help.
Yeah.
They need a professional, and
Yeah.
Unfortunately for them, I'm not the professional. I just have speedrun
Yeah.
marathons.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as-
I just accept Chibi Robo bingo every time.
Yeah, truly. Let's go bingo. As long as you are fair and inclusive, that's
the
probably
best
it's
you can
probably
do.
their
Exactly,
problem.
yeah.
You've done what
Yeah.
you could.
But yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the panel.
Let's go
Yeah.
bingo.
Let's
We're
go bingo.
so bingo.
Yeah.
Let's go back.